I'd never noticed how quiet a cafe could be after closing until she started staying late. The last chairs were flipped onto tables. The espresso machine hissed like it was exhaling. And outside the windows, the streetlights made thin gold ladders across the rain-slicked pavement. I stayed because I told myself I needed to finish grading sketches, but the truth was simpler. Elena was there. She moved behind the counter with unhurried grace, wiping down the same spot twice. She was in her mid-40s, hair pinned up in a way that showed the soft streaks of gray at her temples, a cotton shirt rolled at the sleeves. No wedding ring now, though sometimes she touched the base of her finger as if remembering it. I was 26, still learning how to seem older than I felt, still trying to find a place to put my hands. "Another late night?" she asked, voice low enough that it almost blended with the radio playing something old and jazzy. "Studio crit tomorrow," I said, though my pencil had stopped moving. "I work better here." She smiled at that, a small, distracted smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The air smelled of coffee grounds and lemon cleaner. I told myself she was just being kind, the way she probably was with all her customers. But then she stayed, leaning on the counter instead of finishing her closing tasks, watching me draw. "You always sketch people," she said after a while. "Do you ever draw yourself?" I shook my head. I wouldn't know where to start. She tilted her head, like she was trying to read something between my words. "Maybe you just haven't looked long enough." Her comment sat between us, heavier than it should have been. I felt the back of my neck heat. For a second, I almost asked if she'd let me draw her instead, but my voice caught. I bent over the page and shaded the corner of a window instead. My hand trembled slightly. The line came out crooked. From the speakers, the song ended and a moment of dead air filled the room. She didn't rush to change it. The quiet made every sound sharp. The clink of her ringless fingers against the glass, my shallow breath, the tick of the wall clock. "I should probably lock up," she said at last, though she didn't move. "Yeah," I said, still not packing my things. She gave a small laugh, more like an exhale. "You're stubborn. You keep letting me stay," I replied before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine then, quick and searching. Whatever passed over her face, curiosity, caution, something else. I felt it in my chest like a skipped heartbeat. She reached for the light switch, but paused, fingers resting on the wall. "I could make you a coffee before you go," she said softly. "One last cup." It was the kind of offer that could be nothing or everything. I closed my sketchbook, aware of how loud the snap of its cover sounded. Rain drummed harder on the windows, and somewhere out on the street a car door slammed. Before I could answer, her phone lit up on the counter. A message preview glowed bright in the dim cafe. She glanced at it, and her face changed, just a flicker, but enough to make my stomach tighten. She slid the phone toward herself, thumb hovering, not opening the message. Then she looked back at me, eyes unreadable. "Sorry," she murmured. "I didn't expect." The phone buzzed again, louder this time. And in that moment, her hand still on the switch, my sketchbook clutched too tight. We both stopped, waiting to see what would happen next. The next afternoon I told myself I was just dropping by for caffeine before my studio crit, but my feet were ahead of me, carrying me back to her cafe as if it were part of my route. The rain had cleared and sunlight pooled on the worn wooden floorboards. She was already there, bent over a ledger with reading glasses perched low on her nose. She looked up and smiled, small, polite, but something in it felt like relief. "No sketchbook today?" she asked. I lifted the paper cup between us. "I'm off duty." She nodded, then glanced back at her ledger. "It's strange. I used to have whole afternoons like yours, free enough to draw, to read. Life gets narrower." I hesitated. "You had kids?" "One son," she said. "He's about your age. Out west now. Architecture too, funny enough." She gave a soft laugh. "We don't talk much." The words hung there, tender and raw. I'd grown up with a father who left before I turned 10, and a mother who worked nights. Something about her confession brushed against a familiar ache. "You miss him," I said quietly. She shrugged, a practiced gesture meant to look casual. "He's busy." And I made choices back then. Her fingers tapped the counter once, twice, as though keeping time with memories. A marriage that lasted longer than it should have. A business that took every weekend. You blink, and a decade's gone. I stared at my coffee lid. My fiancée said something like that when she left. The word fiancé felt odd in my mouth now. She said she couldn't be with someone who's always somewhere else, even if that somewhere is just a drawing board. Elena's eyes softened. I'm sorry. It's okay, I said, though my throat tightened. It wasn't working. Neither of us spoke for a while. A couple at a corner table laughed over something on a phone. Outside, wind stirred a newspaper down the sidewalk. I shouldn't be telling you all this, I said finally. Maybe you needed to, she murmured. Her voice was low, steady, not comforting exactly, more like she was simply making space. That was the risky part, the thing we weren't saying. She wasn't just an older woman behind a counter. She was someone's mother, someone who still wore traces of a life she'd built and lost. And I was barely steady on my own feet, still trying to make something of myself. Yet when she reached across to hand me a napkin, no reason, just a reflex, her fingers brushed mine and stayed a fraction too long. A pause, a breath, a silent acknowledgement. Neither of us moved. Her hand withdrew slowly, leaving warmth on my skin. She exhaled, almost a whisper. You're too young to carry so much, she said. And before I could answer, she tucked a stray hair behind her ear and looked at me. Really looked, like she was seeing the outline of someone she hadn't expected. The moment passed, but the air between us felt different now, charged, as if both of us had stepped just a little closer to a line we couldn't name. The cafe was half empty when I came in that evening. Twilight stretched across the windows, throwing soft blue over everything. Elena stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, wiping down an already clean surface. She looked up quickly, like she'd been waiting but didn't want to show it. You're early, she said. Studio let out. My voice sounded casual, but my heart was hammering. A low buzz came from her phone. She glanced at it and flipped it face down without opening the message. Rain's coming again, she murmured. You might get stuck here. I don't mind. I took the stool closest to her side of the counter. We both felt quiet. She poured me a coffee without asking, hand steady but jaw tight. Her wedding ring finger, bare, as always, kept brushing the edge of the cup. I wondered if the texts were from the same person as before. Everything okay? I asked. She hesitated. Just my ex. He's persistent. She gave a brittle smile. He doesn't like the idea of me having friends. The word friends sat between us like a warning. I nodded, unsure what to say. She reached for a pastry tray. Our hands almost collided. We both froze. She started. But the door swung open, and a tall man stepped in, shaking water off his coat. Older than me, grayer than her. His eyes went straight to Elena. Elena. His tone was sharp, like a question he'd already decided the answer to. She straightened. Daniel, we're closed. I saw the lights. His gaze flicked to me. Student. Customer. I said, but it came out like an apology. Daniel's jaw worked. We should talk, he told her. Now. I'm working, she said evenly, but her hands were trembling slightly as she stacked cups. I pushed back from the counter. I can come back. No, she said quickly, then softer. Finish your coffee. The man's stare shifted between us. He's awfully young, isn't he? Her breath caught. It's not. She stopped, pressing her lips together. He gave a bitter little laugh and turned for the door. I'll call, he said, and left without another word. The bell jingled, then silence. Elena closed her eyes, hand pressed to her forehead. I'm sorry you had to. It's okay. My voice was low. Really? When she looked at me again, her eyes were wet, though no tears fell. This is a mistake, she whispered. You should go. But neither of us moved. My hand rested on the counter, hers, inches away. Rain hammered against the glass. A flash of lightning lit the room, then darkness as the power blinked off. We stayed like that in the dim glow of her phone screen, breathing the same damp air, each waiting for the other to step back. Neither did. The next time I saw her was 3 days later, in the late afternoon light. The cafe was quiet again, but she didn't look up when I walked in. Her hair was loose, falling around her face, and a folder lay open on the counter, filled with papers she kept shuffling but not reading. Elena, I said softly. She flinched at the sound of her name. I should have called you. Her voice was low, almost hoarse. I shouldn't have let things go this far. I stayed by the door. What happened? She slid the folder toward me without meeting my eyes. Inside were printed screenshots of text messages, mine to her, hers to me. Some were cropped, taken out of context. My chest went cold. Daniel had someone watching, she whispered. A friend who comes in here sometimes. He sent these to our son. Said he should know what his mother is doing. I swallowed hard. Your son. He called me last night. Her hands were trembling. Said I was humiliating him. Said you're practically his age. I could feel the floor tilting under me. He's the one out west in architecture, I murmured. She nodded, finally lifting her eyes. They were red at the edges. He was your teaching assistant last year, wasn't he? It hit like a punch. I saw the connection, photos on the department bulletin board, a name I hadn't connected until now. I'd been his student for one semester. No wonder Daniel had gone digging. I didn't know, I said, words scraping my throat. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. She pressed her palms to her temples. But it doesn't matter now. He's furious. Daniel's threatening to show the texts to the dean. He says I'm ruining your career and his reputation. I stepped closer, but stopped just short of touching her. Tell me what you want me to do. I don't know. She gave a short, shaky laugh. Part of me wants you to run. Finish your degree, forget this place. Pretend we never. Her voice cracked. And part of me can't stand the thought of you leaving. The cafe door rattled in the wind. Outside, a bus roared past, shaking the windows. She gripped the edge of the counter like it was the only solid thing left. I reached out then, and, slowly, laid my hand over hers. She didn't pull back. For a heartbeat, the noise outside faded, and it was just the warmth of her skin under my palm, the faint tremor running through her fingers. I'm not going to pretend, I said quietly. Not anymore. Her eyes flicked up to mine, wide with fear and something else, something that looked like defiance. A text buzzed on her phone again. She didn't look at it. Neither did I. The storm broke just as I stepped inside. Wind rattled the glass, rain sweeping across the windows in silver sheets. Elena was already waiting at a corner table, no apron, no ledger, just a small mug of tea clasped between both hands. She looked like someone who hadn't slept. I locked the doors, she said quietly. No interruptions this time. I sat opposite her, feeling the damp cling to my clothes. The cafe smelled of wet concrete and cinnamon. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence itself felt like a decision we were both making. She broke it first. Daniel sent the screenshots to the dean. My son called again. He says if I don't end this, he'll file a formal complaint. Her eyes glimmered. He wants me to apologize for crossing boundaries. I stared at the table's worn edge. I don't want to be the reason you lose anything, I said. Her laugh was soft and bitter. I've already lost plenty. Marriage. Tom with my kid. My reputation is just another thing on the list. She set the mug down, fingers trembling. But I can't decide if this, she gestured between us, is love or just another mistake I'm too old to make. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. It doesn't feel like a mistake to me. But I don't want to trap you either. If you tell me to go, I'll go. She looked at me then, really looked, eyes tired but fierce. You're so young, she whispered. You still think everything can be solved by choosing the right door. And you think no door leads anywhere, I murmured. She gave a small, surprised smile at that. Maybe. The storm roared louder, shaking the windows. She reached across the table without seeming to decide first. Her fingertips touched mine, light as a question. I didn't move. I can't undo the scandal, she said. I can't make my son forgive me. But I can stop hiding. Then don't hide, I said. She inhaled sharply, as though the words cut. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But I'd rather be unsure with you than safe somewhere else. For a moment she closed her eyes, tears sliding down, but no sobs. Then she shifted her hand fully into mine, weaving our fingers together. The cafe felt very small, as if the rest of the world had slipped outside with the ring. I don't know what happens next, she whispered. Neither do I said. But we're here now. She opened her eyes and smiled. Small, unsteady, but real. And in that cramped, Stormlit cafe, we stayed like that, hand in hand. Not a declaration, not a promise, but a choice neither of us had been brave enough to make until now. Outside, the storm began to ease, but we didn't move. A week later, the cafe reopened under a new rhythm. The gossip had already begun to drift away from the front page of people's minds, replaced by new rumors, new scandals. Rain had given way to early spring sunlight. The air inside smelled of fresh paint. She'd used the downtime to patch the walls and change the playlist. I walked in, half expecting the door to be locked. Elena was at the counter, hair tied back, wiping her hands on a flour-stained towel. She looked up, and for a heartbeat we both hesitated, like two actors unsure if the next scene was still ours to play. "Hi," I said. "Hi," she echoed. Then, quietly, "No more complaints. The dean called me. He's disappointed, but not pressing charges. Daniel stopped sending threats. My son." She trailed off, searching for words. "He's angry, but he's talking to me again." Slowly, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "I'm glad." She gave a small, uncertain smile. "I'm not sure what we are now. Friends? Something else? But we're not a secret anymore." I walked closer. "I don't need a definition yet." We stood in the newly painted cafe, the world outside bright and ordinary. The tension that had hummed between us for weeks had shifted, not gone, but softened, like a song finding its last notes. She reached for a coffee cup, hesitated, and then set it down. "I've been thinking about closing on Sundays," she said, eyes flicking up to mine. "Taking time to visit my son, to fix things." "You should," I said. "He's lucky to have the chance." Her throat worked as she swallowed. "And you? You've got your crit reviews coming up. A future." "I'll be around," I said. "But I want you to do what you need." A pause stretched between us. Then she stepped forward and, without ceremony, brushed her fingers across my cheek. A small, almost maternal gesture that somehow held everything we hadn't said. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not running." I caught her hand gently before she could pull back. "I didn't come here for coffee anymore," I said. "You know that." She smiled at that. "Wry, tender." "Yes, I do." The bell above the door rang as a new customer entered, breaking the moment. She squeezed my hand once, then turned to greet them, her voice calm, practiced. I moved aside, sipping the coffee she'd poured for me, watching sunlight scatter across the floor. We weren't fixed. We weren't finished. But for the first time, neither of us was hiding, and that felt like a beginning.